going to let them in for now because we've no way of verifying that at the moment. So we'll look at that next week. The other kind of questions that people have asked about Zoom in relation to privacy is it fully end-to-end encrypted? So the answer is Zoom calls and chat are encrypted in transport. Yeah, so we've had another useful point in the chat is we are recording these Zoom chats to share with people more widely. So we're assuming if you're on the call and sharing that you're happy for that to happen. If you don't want to have your contribution shared as part of the link later, then just stay quiet.
Yeah.
The point about privacy, I was just mentioning on end-to-end encryption, is that the encryption standard is fine for most things you'd want to do. If you were a government or cabinet doing very sensitive meetings, you'd probably want to host Zoom inside your own computer system, which would give you an absolutely solid level of encryption where nobody has any access to knowing who's on your calls. But for most charities delivering most services, it is secure enough, and small issues that get flagged up are often like theoretical vulnerabilities to issues that would affect a very small number of users. One of the resources we'll be producing at the end of this call and available early next week as a blog is an overview of how a youth charity in Somerset have implemented Zoom as their way of doing online counselling. So all the measures they have in place make sure it's a safe and stable platform. And part of that is practical questions like, if you've got a young person receiving counselling, have they got a place they can be private while they're talking to you online? Because if you're sharing a house, you may not have a completely private space. So that's a kind of obvious consideration on top of the technical questions. But for now, I would say no online conferencing solution is absolutely perfectly secure. You need to apply some practical steps like we've just done. So we've had to do that in a great hurry this morning, where we assumed being open would be fine, but we realized it wouldn't. Like one analogy would be, we had a public building with a door propped wide open. We've now got a kind of registration desk on the front to provide a bit more assurance, and we'll work on a way of making that more structured going forward. But all the time when we're using tools, we're going to have to be thinking of that balance between, is something secure and safe, but also is it easy for people to access? Because you could build a very, very secure system. It had lots of controls in place, but if a large amount of your client group struggle to use that, then that would be a big drawback you'd have to consider as well. So I think that's probably all I want to say on it for now. I'm sorry to anybody who's in that very first call where you had that bad experience, and I hope that's a kind of vivid case study of what can happen if you're not securing things, but we hope we can go forward this morning with the rest of the chat we're going to have anyway. So back to you, Ross.
Cool. Yeah, so just to say for everyone, if you open up the chat box, so it looks like the kind of little speech bubble if you haven't used the chat box before. Jen has just put a link to the Google Doc specifically for this call. So that Google Doc has the kind of rundown of the timings. Obviously we're kind of about half an hour behind because of what happened. And it's got a note of who's going to be kind of sharing their experiences today. You can also add in your own details into that form if you like as well. At the top of that form is a link to the bigger form that has loads of case studies and things in there as well. The other link that Jen is going to put in the chat is the link to the SCVO website, which has a really nicely structured landing page specifically on digital service delivery for charities. And it's got basically everything that you could think of, really nicely categorized. And what we're doing from these calls is we're pulling out best practice into that kind of bigger doc, and then we're building out that landing page with all those tools and resources and best practice. And that's going to be a resource that kind of grows over time. Okay, doke. I think we're pretty much, everyone's now in from the waiting room, so we're up at 112 people. So we've not lost a huge amount of people from the original call, which is good. Thank you all for being so patient with all of this. Obviously it's quite tricky in terms of what we're trying to do and trying to strike that balance between something that's a really open experience that anyone can join, versus something that's kind of quite locked down and obviously puts up barriers towards people joining it. Just in terms of housekeeping, you can use the chat, so if you've got any questions or things you want to add in and you're not comfortable speaking, you can always use the chat and Jen can pull those out. If you want to speak, whether it's a question or you want to share your own experience or make a point or talk about a resource or a toolkit or something you've seen another charity do, just stick your finger up and we'll try and pick that up. We'll be looking at all the chat windows and we'll bring you into the call. If you think something is particularly good, so if you're hearing something from our charity and you agree with it, you think it's a good point, and give them a thumbs up so that they know that you're listening. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly bring in our first person who's going to share their experience. So it's Jane Griffin from LGBT Youth Scotland. Jane, I'm pretty sure I saw you in amongst the 112 faces here. Are you about, Jane? Can you unmute yourself if you are?
I am. I'm here.
Hey, hello, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hiya there. So, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. The guys have asked me just to speak a little bit about what we're doing at LGBT Scotland just now. So obviously with everything going on, we run youth groups nationally across Scotland normally, and we've managed to move everything online very, very quickly. But at the minute we're using Facebook to do that because we had already set up secure private groups within Facebook. But what we're trying to do is to actually move away from that because young people do not like to use it. There's a lot of privacy issues and they, particularly our group of young people, LGBT young people, find it really difficult to get onto Facebook because of the rules around setting up accounts. So what we've done in the past wee while is a lot of work with young people to find out what they are using. Now, I'm maybe not the best person to talk about this because I'm an old fogey, but maybe I'm the right person because we don't need to understand the ins and outs of it. But what young people are using to communicate, we found, is a platform called Discord. Some of you might have heard of it. Some of you will be going, I have no idea what that is. And it's basically a communication platform that gamers use to chat while they're playing games online. Young people use it heavily to communicate with friends as well because it's very, very accessible for them. You can set up a private server, which is basically like a Slack workspace, and it allows them to connect with their friends. You can do video chat, you can do voice calls, and you can do chat, you can share documents. It's very much like Slack, if anybody's using that here. And young people are already in there and they've been telling us.
Keeping staff and contributors safe is a priority. Video interviews.
Okay, sorry about this, Jen.
Yourself.
Wait for them to be hard, but putting mics and our sound to be captured safely.
Telly. So basically, what we've tried to do is we applied to Force for Good and we got some support from JP Morgan, and we've had a development team working with us for the last kind of 4 or 5 months. We're aiming to launch our Discord community. It was initially going to be in July, but actually we're now trying to pull this forward and launch it in May. It's linked with a learning hub as well, which we're developing using Moodle, which is a kind of learning platform that lots of schools and colleges use. And we're going to be basically putting our session content onto Moodle and then linking that back into the Discord community, which will be our community space. Our aim from the start with that has been to share all our learning with as many people as we can. So we're linking directly into the youth work sector through YouthLink to share that, but we'll be sharing it wider as well. So part of the project has always been that the team deliver us not only the platform, but a user manual to go with it, and as much automation as possible. So what they've managed to develop is a couple of bots that will automatically do a lot of the work for us. So one actually just basically delivers or develops the platform in the way that we've set it up. So basically you run the bot on Discord and it sets everything up the way that we have, and then you can tweak it for your own use. We've also got another bot which they've developed specifically for us, which kind of manages that process of onboarding young people into the server. As you've seen from the issues we've had this morning, security and safeguarding is a massive issue. And when you're working with LGBT young people who are particularly vulnerable and particularly aware of privacy issues and what's being shared, it's been key for us. So we're kind of built that in from the get-go of being really careful about how we bring people on board, how the server is set up, what's locked down and what's open, and where things are shared. So we've kind of layered it in a way that it makes it workable for young people, and that it gives them a community space. Some of the moderation will be done by young people themselves, who are kind of used to doing that on Discord anyway, but they'll have limited powers, and then the kind of higher moderation tasks will be done by staff. The bots will control how people can access the server. So we're going to be really, really careful about that, and it's going to have a stringent process whereby the way we currently have young people access groups is they've got to come through our website, they've got to fill out their email address, and then a youth worker contacts them, usually brings them in for a meeting. At the moment, we're doing those on video calls just now using Microsoft Teams, and we'll be moving on to doing that within Discord. So what we can actually do is send a link out that gives somebody access to the server, but very, very limited access. They can't see anybody else that's in it. They can only see 2 channels within it. One is an introduction channel and one is the rules. They have to read the rules and then make their introduction. They've been asked within the rules to say something specific that basically they have to do in the introduction to prove that they've read the rules, so that we know that they've done it. They have to have had a face-to-face with a youth worker, and that can be done within the Discord platform. And once we've done that, and we have, we can then have guarantee that that is a young person for start, and that they are somebody who needs our services, we can then let them have access to the fuller server. Each geographical area has got a lockdown kind of channel for their own youth group, so that young people who are also in our face-to-face services can access that and speak to their friends within their youth group, and youth workers can chat to them as well. So it gives us an added kind of place to deliver. But there's also thematic channels within it as well, much as SCVO and their leadership and digital leadership Slack workspace have got thematic channels, and the Digital Champions one. So young people can chat to other people within their age groups or geographical wider areas. All of that is controlled by a bot, so it allocates roles to people based on choices that they make, and it's all done through emojis. So the way it's been set up is super, super cool. So young people can come in and they can pick an emoji for the area in Scotland that they live. They can pick an emoji that gives what their preferred pronouns are, so he, she, they, them, that sort of thing. And this allocates it onto their profile for them. So it's a really clever way of doing a lot of stuff that we would normally do in a face-to-face youth group.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jen. So there's a couple of questions coming in the chat. Jen's going to be picking those up. So we're going to hear, we've still got a few more speakers, and we're going to pick out some of the kind of questions and people can get a chance to ask those. The other thing just to say in terms of, I guess, the other stuff that we're doing beyond this call is we're trying to develop resources into quite specific areas. So Discord's a tool that's not used a lot in the charity sector, but it's used a lot by young people, which is why Jane's organisation has selected it and doing some really interesting stuff in that space. If that's something that there's enough people are interested in, what we can do is we can create a resource around Discord using LGBTY Youth Scotland as an example, and John or I or Jen or someone else in the SCVO digital team can put that on the kind of growing list of resources that we're trying to develop for people. So if there's another bunch of youth work organisations out there who think actually Discord's something that could work well for us, we can pull something together and we can get it out for people. Okay, so next person, I'm hoping Jess McBeath from Lemon Tree Consultancy is in the room. Jess, are you about? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me? I've turned on the mic.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah, I can hear you. Brilliant.
Okay, this is great because actually I do have to leave at 12:30, so I'm aware that we're kind of running a bit behind.
Yeah.
So I'm an online safety consultant. I also contract with the UK Safer Internet Centre. We've been doing a lot of work around about all of this as well, and me individually. I'm actually working on a resource just now, which is how you identify a suitable platform for service delivery. There's so much here. In terms of choosing a platform, my kind of guidance right now would be check the terms, okay? Because there's quite a lot of platforms which don't allow business use, so service delivery. They may do that if you request them. So, and I would include Discord in that, having had a very quick look at its terms and conditions. Having said that, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to go and find somebody that's better able to interpret the terms and conditions for me. But certainly when I've looked at platforms such as WhatsApp, House Party, Snapchat, TikTok, etc., these are not set up. These are set up for personal use. They're not for service delivery. So that's probably the first thing to think about if you're looking at any platform. For young users, obviously, the other issues we have what the minimum age is supposed to be. So if you look at Zoom, for example, minimum age is supposed to be 16. WhatsApp's obviously 16. Most of the rest are 13. But you need to think carefully around about the kind of consents that are being gained, who's providing consent for a young person, and if they do have to set up an account. You've already talked a lot about the privacy controls and settings. I do have a little bit of a concern about encryption. Purely, I understand the desire to ensure that data is encrypted during transit, but we must also look at the issues from a professional safeguarding perspective as well. So if, for example, somebody was to make an allegation about a member of staff or a volunteer, how easy would it be to check the contents of what's actually happened? So part of that is encryption might play a part in that. Also in terms of how live engagement is recorded, where those recordings are stored, how long they're stored for. And there's loads more, to be honest, in terms of the kind of the technicalities, the data protection. I do also have a little bit of a concern about platforms that people might not want to use, right? So and this works for kind of professionals and volunteers as well, but they might be using a platform on a personal basis. They don't want to use it for work, right? Or they don't agree with the terms and conditions, the data collection, all the rest of it. So from an accessibility perspective, we need to think about how we're going to provide services or work with everybody else if they don't want to, if they don't agree with Zoom's privacy policy, for example, they don't want to use Zoom, then how are you going to manage all of that? From a kind of wider safeguarding perspective, John already mentioned about, thinking about how we're engaging with young people or any kind of vulnerable group, where they are, if they're at home. One-to-one is obviously problematic potentially. So if you are having one-to-one sessions, then think about how can you have another professional engaged in that scenario, right? So either physically present or part of the call or whatever, obviously with everybody understanding that, or the kind of recording side of things. To be honest, I could go on and on. there's a load here. Yep. We've also done some resources for kind of schools as well, and there's some resources that I can point to as well. I'll put them in the chat for people to link to. But that's probably my kind of starter.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so just worth saying, so anything, if anyone's got their own resources and toolkits, you can add them in the chat. The other thing which I've just put a link for is we have a specific section on the kind of bigger original Google Doc, which has lots of safeguarding privacy policies and best practice, and that's been added in from existing charities. So if you are a counselling charity and you're thinking, well, what are the BACP or COSCA saying about this stuff? Well, there's actually advice from those specific bodies in there. The same for youth work. Pretty much most sectors now, if you go into that link that's in there, you'll see there's lots and lots of safeguarding privacy stuff. So this is one of the things I would say is particularly where you're rolling out stuff quickly is you still need to be safe, as Jess has mentioned, but actually what you don't need to be doing is writing a complete policy or safeguarding kind of toolkit for staff from scratch, because a lot of this stuff exists already, and it's taking these and thinking about how you adapt them and make them reasonable for the work that you're trying to do, particularly with your beneficiaries. Okay, so I'm going to bring in, I'm hoping she's about, so Kat from PAMIS should be in the call. I think Kat is in. I should have saw Kat, maybe she's not. Kat, are you about? Anyone see Kat waving her hand? Right, maybe Kat didn't make it into the second tranche. Right, we'll come back to Kat and see if she's joined us. Jenn, you are about, Jenn Goff from Waverley Care.
Yeah, I am indeed.
Hello.
Hi. So I've really just put together a couple of quick points. Sorry, I had my camera covered. Starting with the safeguarding. So I just basically have a couple of points. Our live chat services have basically been extended. So I'd done a lot of this work kind of before this is all kicked off. So I've just kind of come up with the key points that anyone who's thinking about starting live chat services through their website can think about. And yeah, if anybody wants to contact me, then if they have any questions, they can always do so. So the first big point would be just be really clear about the boundaries of the digital support services. So for us, we can give support and advice in relation to HIV, Hep C and sexual health. But certainly from the amount of time that we've been delivering the live chat services, there's definitely been other queries that have come in, people looking for support with domestic violence, people looking for mental health support. So it's really important that you communicate on your website very clearly that what your live chat advisors are there for. And that for us, obviously, we provide advice and information about HIV, Hep C and sexual health online, but when somebody requires support, that we refer them on to our support teams. So that would be the big thing, and I'd just be clear about that. The second point is, I mean, you probably have all thought this, but making sure you're GDPR compliant. Most developers will have a statement of compliance with GDPR. So a kind of a shortcut to managing that would be just contacting your developer when you're setting up a live chat service and asking them to provide you with their standard statement and amending that in relation to your own services. So our developer has sent to us over one. It's a very standard one, so I'm happy to share a kind of an emptied version of that with anyone if you want it. The other thing is, if you need to, you can integrate, rather than writing a whole new policy, it's probably just best to integrate it into your current policy. So in terms of things like information sharing within the organization, your live chat service, you treat it like a physical space. So your staff members should obviously all be PVG checked, anyone who's managing it, all working under the same information sharing procedures that you would have if somebody was providing in-person support as well. So again, you know, that's just standard for any organization. So the other thing is making sure whatever function that you choose for your live chat services mean that the person who's accessing that service can access the information that, you know, the conversation that takes place. So we use talk.to, and that allows the person who's engaging with you to download the full transcript. So that's really, really important. So I'm not sure what other kind of functions are out there, but that's why we went with that one, was that it is so transparent for the person who's accessing the service. And then just two more quick points. A big thing is making sure that your team who are actually providing the live chat services know where onward support can be accessed. So they know where somebody can get mental health support, when there's an emergency or a crisis, when to ring NHS 24 or the police, you know, really drilling down all of that, making sure that your team have access to support information about support services on domestic violence, addiction, mental health, sexual violence, victim support, support for refugees and asylum seekers. Like, think of every social issue that people accessing your services ordinarily might face, and make sure that your team on live chat have access to that information. Now, if you've got a staff team who are already working in the field, providing support, and are now answering questions via live chat, often they'll know that information, but it's just good to have it all in one place. So I've also put all that on our website just to make sure that if somebody does go on and they want to find out about our live chat service, they know the boundaries of it, but also if they're on it and they're looking for additional support, that they can access it there as well. So it kind of is handy for both when you're compiling that list together. And then I suppose the last point really is that anyone, although live chat in itself is information provision, it's not just information provision. So the people who are using it need to be comfortable with the fact that they are providing support in some way, and that the queries that come in could be really distressing. So I think just on a very personal level, checking in with whoever is actually managing the live chat or delivering that service, just to make sure that they're doing okay, that they're happy enough to carry out that service, making sure they understand what they might face when they're on that. And also the sense of powerlessness sometimes when somebody does come to you and they say something, you know, they're going through a really difficult experience, and there is a limitation on what you can do when it's over live chat. So there's also just the kind of emotional support for staff. There's safeguarding of staff as well as the people accessing the service. And yeah, that's basically, those are my top tips for live chat services. But as I said, if anyone has any questions, just give me a shout. I think my email address I'll pop it in there as well in case anyone needs to get in contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jen. I've put a link to Jen's services in the chat. And just to say as well, because I'm conscious there'll be lots of kind of conversations might spring up over this. It's worth going and looking at that document which we shared in chat first of all, which gathers up some of this best practice, and then figuring out if there's kind of questions that kind of follow on from that. Kat from PAMIS has just joined us. Kat, are you able to unmute your mic and you can join us in the chat?
Hey, how are you doing, everybody?
Good, hello.
Hi, Kat.
Yay.
Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
Great. Do you want to tell us a wee bit about safeguarding and privacy just from the perspective of your organisation?
Sure, yeah. So I work for a charity called PAMIS. The people that we support have all got profound and multiple intellectual disabilities. So as such, if they are children and young people, it's usually the parents that are making the decisions around them. If they're older, then there's usually a guardianship order in place and that sort of thing. Effectively, 9 times out of 10, that means the parents are usually still the people that are making decisions. So for a lot of our projects, we go through the parents. We work really strongly with governance via the government. I put together a wee crib sheet that I can put into the chat. Hang on. So we refer everything to the latest governance from the Scottish Government, Scottish Digital, also the ISO, and make sure that that happens. But for things like, well, our flagship, one of our flagships is the PAMS Digital Passport, and that is citizen-owned data. It's a flick-through ebook, so a lot of the people that we support are not able to communicate and make themselves understood very effectively with the people around them. And so the parents came up with an idea to use video and speech and just text to actually familiarise people with the person that they support, their family member. And there was a lot of questions about who's got the right to share this information and that sort of thing. So we did a bit of a deep dive into it. And under the new digital strategy, Scottish Digital Strategy, which is absolutely solid about citizen-owned data, it is your data and it's absolutely up to you who you share that with. And so you're lending that data to organisations such as the NHS, such as social care organisations and that sort of thing to support your care. So the current COVID issues, so we had a little look into how that's affecting how we're sharing data. We went to the ISO, had a look at the governance data, and their recommendations are that they are going to be taking a much more practical and pragmatic point of view on this. Scottish Government guidance is that there could be more harm done than good if people are holding back data. And so we're pretty robust in sort of making sure that we're talking to people, making sure that the parents that are representing the people, their family members, are informed about how things are being used. If we're sharing data, we're doing it so that it's congruent with the latest sort of government guidelines. So we're video conferencing, we're running counselling sessions just at the minute with parents, and art therapy sessions and things like that. We're doing that via video conferencing, but that actually is congruent with the recommendations that are out just now. So it's been sort of we were already there because of the group that we work with, they're a protected group anyway. We always have been very careful, but it was looking at the changing landscape that is coming out in response to COVID. We get an awful lot of information through the NMAP. I'm part of the NMAP Digital Leads group, and that's nurses, midwives, and allied health professions. I'm a nurse too, that's my background, learning disabilities nurse. And so there's a lot online coming out through that. That's Debbie Proven that chairs that, and Leslie Holdsworth on Twitter puts out an awful lot of information and keys us in. So yeah, that's kind of where we are with it. We're robust, but we're referring into sort of what's actually coming out at the time.
Great, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got our final speaker is Fiona Harvey from Chaz. Fee, are you still in the room?
I am. I'm here. If you can
Hello.
hear me.
Yeah. I can't tell if that's a world map behind you or if your paint's just come off. Is it the paint?
No, it is. It's a world map. And
It's a
people
world
often
map. That's
think
good.
I'm going to present the news or the weather
I
or
know, it's
something
quite
when I'm sitting
exciting.
here.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. Yeah, it's good.
Professional.
Mhm.
So I work for Chaz, and we're in kind of a period of change at the moment, because what we're trying to do is take our services from more of a hospice-based care in the home model to more of a digital model. And we are starting to work on the idea of Scotland's first virtual children's hospice service.
Wow.
So we have a hospice, we've got 2 children's hospices in Scotland, and we also have an at-home service where nurses go into people's homes to support families of children with life-shortening conditions. What we're looking to do at the moment is now move a lot of those services to a more digital model, because the hospices themselves have to concentrate on end-of-life care right now. And we want to make sure that if families can't get to the hospices, we can absolutely take the hospice care and the hospice services to them in their homes. And we're focusing on a kind of digital, virtual way of delivering that. So a lot of this actually is about providing services we already provide, but just changing the way in which we do it. So the starting point for us is that we've got our nurses who are working in the hospices and who might not actually be able to work at the moment for whatever reason, because they're considered vulnerable or at risk. They can make kindness calls to families who use our services, and that can be done from home. So they're making these calls, and it's just a check-in with the families to see how they're doing. We know a lot of them are struggling. So through the calls, we're identifying what the biggest needs are for our families and seeing how we, using the unique services that Chaz has, how we can support them at this time through isolation. So the first is through providing our nursing, our medical and our pharmacy support. At the moment we're doing that by telephone, but we're looking at other services and other ways of delivering that. So things like we're looking into Near Me, Hospify, obviously Zoom as one of the options, FaceTime, all these kinds of different platforms, and we're at the point of scoping that at the moment. We don't know which one we'll settle on. We're going to test them, and the important thing is that we're working with families to test these things, so it's not being done in isolation. We had a family testing out Zoom yesterday, and we'll keep testing and refining what we're doing as we're going along. Related to that, we've got other services like the clown doctors who come into our hospice. We're going to see if we can deliver their services by the likes of Zoom into people's homes.
That's really cool.
We've got our activities team and our play therapists. They've set up a YouTube channel, so they've got stories, they've got art projects for kids to get involved in, they've got songs on there, but they're also looking at delivering activity packs to families' homes so that they can keep kids engaged and occupied at this time. We're also delivering bereavement support, taking that from a face-to-face model to a more digital and a phone-based service as well. But again, working with families to make sure we get that right for them. And we're also accelerating a piece of work on connecting families. So we know that when families come into the hospice, they get on really well and they make connections with each other. But we want to make sure that we're offering that support on a wider basis, so that they are supporting each other throughout this strange isolation time. So we're looking at whether we can set up some kind of online forum, and that would be with content submitted by families and then moderated with families as well. So it's just another support mechanism for them. We're also offering our money benefits advice system by phone, and that might also change to video calls once we figure out which platform we're going to use. So that's the existing services that we're changing to more of a digital model. We're trying some new things as well, and this is specifically around volunteer roles that we'll be introducing. So our volunteering strategy is aiming to develop new, inclusive, flexible volunteering roles, and we want to make sure that we can do that by having roles that volunteers can do from home. We've stood down all of our volunteers for health reasons. We don't want to put anyone at risk at this time, but we want to keep volunteers engaged. So we're going to be having volunteers who will be making friendship calls to families. If that's identified in the initial calls with the nurses, that they might just benefit from a chat with a volunteer, we can match them up. We're also looking at digital or virtual storytelling. So we have a volunteer call a family, tell a story to a child and have that one-on-one interaction with someone. And then not so much a digital platform, but we're looking at letter writing as well. Can we get volunteers and families involved in actually writing to families who are in isolation? And hopefully a lot of these things will keep going after things return to normal. The challenges we're facing are around access to digital. Do families have the devices? Do they have the Wi-Fi? And obviously that's the first step, the first hurdle. But then also, you know, how do we get the information out there to families? Some of them haven't given us an email address. We don't have a digital way to contact them. So we're going to use our public social media and our public forums to get that information out to a wider audience across Scotland. So we're in a scoping phase. We're testing a lot of things. We're going to refine it as we go along, but hopefully it'll enable us to take most of our services into a more digital model and show that the funding we're receiving from people at the moment is going to support families across Scotland.
Brilliant, that's amazing. So many interesting pieces of work there. For all of these areas where there's kind of quite specific stuff going on, what we will be doing as a follow-up is getting in touch with any organisations, and I guess thinking about how we can write up some of the best practice and some of the learning. And even when stuff's in those early stages, is actually there's a benefit in that as well. So like Fiona talking about the multiple platforms and they're going to make a choice, is actually, well, here's the 4 that Chance thought about, and here's how we ended up coming to this choice. But actually there's 2 of them that might be suitable for your organisation. So we'll be doing that kind of follow-up and getting that kind of content out. What we'll do now is we'll take some questions. So if there's anyone who wants to ask a question right now, we'll take that one, and then Jenn will take any that have kind of come through the chat. So I can ask, if you want to ask a question for any of the speakers, can you stick your finger up and then I can kind of see you and then bring you into the conversation. Anyone got any questions? Oh, Emily, you've got a question. Do you want to come in first? And then Nadia.
Thanks, Ross. I guess just on the one-to-one work and child protection, so we do mentoring with young people, and we've been thinking a lot about how we deliver this, and we've got some methods of Google Classrooms and stuff that we think we can kind of build in extra people in those conversations from a child protection perspective. But then we've been thinking about phone calls and video calls and trying to then work through the kind of child protection piece of that, if that's happening kind of one-to-one in with our staff members and young people. And then thinking about whether we should record it. And so we were thinking about, at first we were like, well, maybe we should record these for child protection purposes, but then we got into a bit of a black hole around data protection, and then having video of young people and the kind of retention piece of that. And then actually, realistically, did we have the time to watch or listen back to all of those recordings? So I think we're probably getting to a space where it's about having other methods in place and not recording stuff. But I just wondered whether people had any advice on that, because that feels like to us like a bit of a sticky area where it's important to continue doing that one-to-one stuff, but where young people particularly are our young people are kind of 12 to 16. How do we manage the dynamics of that?
So John was wanting to come in on that one, John.
Just a quick one, and I think a youth counselling organisation may be able to fill in with a bit more detail here, but I mean, I think one analogy to draw would be if you're running face-to-face counselling sessions, you probably wouldn't routinely record them. You might have a note of what was discussed, but you wouldn't be expecting to have a kind of tape recorder running in the background all the time. So I think one challenge is, digital technology gives you that capability, but you have to think through, as you've been doing, what the rationale is. So I think it's about, what's the benefit and the safeguard that you're seeing from implementing something. So just because you can turn a feature on doesn't mean you have to do it. So I think Jane maybe wants to come in as well.
Jane, do you want to come in on that one?
You're muted, Jane.
You're muted. I can unmute you. There we go. I've unmuted you. There you go.
Thanks. So yeah, we've had a lot of the same discussions, and it is that thing. I think you start overthinking stuff sometimes, because we do one-to-one support with young people in our offices and in our counselling rooms, and it's one youth worker and a young person, and we wouldn't record them or have video cameras. So it's about making sure that you've got all the other processes in place. And I think for us it's been about kind of reminding all our staff and reiterating that the same processes that you would normally do around safeguarding, totally need to be done in digital, the same as you would do face-to-face. So all our group work sessions and all our one-to-one sessions with young people, they're not recorded, but they're done in exactly the same way as we would for a face-to-face. So we've got paperwork that gets put in place afterwards, so every session gets written up and there's notes taken in it, and it's put onto the person's file. So it's about doing all those sorts of things. Also, we're using the opportunity while we've got a bit of space with hours and focusing people working home, of updating all our paperwork and actually recording it better. So that's a positive, I guess, that's come out of it. It's given us the opportunity to look at it more carefully and do that.
Okay. Can I ask, we're going to move on to the next question just because we're fairly limited for time. So if anyone's got any other thoughts on that, if you can put them in the chat box, it means that people can kind of pick that stuff up. Nadia, you had a question.
Yeah, it's been answered now. So yeah, it was basically kind of a wee bit about, we're a play therapy charity, and we're trying to move that as much as we can online. The children we work with are a lot younger than a lot of maybe the people that Jane are working with. They're 3 to kind of 11. So what Fiona was talking about was quite interesting to me. I was just trying to get some kind of best practice for how to set up some kind of policy, you know, for our therapists delivering this. We can't obviously do that for a lot of our clients because not all parents are still engaging at the moment because the kids aren't at school. So that's a challenge we're trying to kind of overcome just now, because when the kids aren't actually, some of the kids are from quite high tariff families and they're not engaging with school anymore, and they're not also engaging with our organisation. So we've sent out packs to the families, to their addresses, but it's just kind of trying to overcome that challenge now for us. So if anybody has any experience of that, it would be really good to kind of hear from them.
Okay, anyone want to come in on that one? Other speakers?
One question I saw in chat that was quite an interesting one was, I think Philippa asked this one, and it was about whether charities are adopting digital as a kind of short-term stopgap, or whether they think it will become a longer-term way of working. So that was an interesting one to think about.
Yeah. That's quite, I guess it's quite a big open question, but it's something that, I think we should all be thinking about. It's maybe something actually we can pick up as a theme in future conversations, that this isn't seen as a stopgap. And I think it's that difficult situation where you're trying to react very quickly, but you're also building something that potentially has a longer term impact in your organisation. It might fundamentally shift the way that you're working and how you think about that. So it's a really good point. Okay, Kate Tobin had her hand up. Kate, are you about? I don't think you're on video though, but if you want to come in.
Yeah, sorry, I am.
There we go.
I know I'm not actually Kate, I'm just using her account.
That's all right.
Max Murphy.
Hello, Max.
Dartington Service Design Lab. So I was kind of more curious for some of our speakers and anyone else in the room, how, if at all, the kind of minimal needs for accessing these are being assessed, and whether some of these digital approaches to services are kind of considering like a tiered approach depending on what technology like vulnerable children maybe have access to. Because I'm conscious that there's going to be a lot of families and children who are really in need of support but don't have the material, you know, to actually access it and make people aware that they need it.
So I mean, I think everyone needs to be considering this right now. There is a lot of very quick work going on from both UK government and in Scotland, and arguably Scotland's maybe slightly further ahead. So John's colleague Aaron and I have been doing some work with Scottish Government. There's quite a few other people involved in that programme, basically looking at how do we get devices, connectivity and basic digital skills to people fairly quickly. So there's work done just now to kind of tier those people, whether they're in that kind of shielding group and whether they have a connection or a device at the moment. And there are plans, and it's quite open actually. So if you go on the SCVO blog, you'll find information on this. There's quite open plans from the Scottish Government around this, but there are plans to try and roll out basically a mobile data plan and devices and basic digital skills to people who are digitally excluded at the moment, and that's going quite rapidly. There's a UK government plan that's happening mainly through Department of Culture and Sport and Nominate. So if you search online, you'll see some of the stuff around that. The Scottish Government stuff, arguably because we're a smaller country, is moving much more quickly. So hopefully it won't necessarily be an answer to that, but I think we'll address a lot of those issues. But I do agree, I mean, you need to think about, is there a tiered approach within this rather than just a kind of blanket, we now just deliver digital services? It may not be as simple as that for certain organisations. Okay, anyone else got any questions or any points? So Sharon Erskine, do you want to jump in? I will unmute you, Sharon.
Hi, yeah.
Hello.
Hi, so we've started a bit of a Twitter campaign, where we're hoping to, because our concern is that we've got a lot of our vulnerable families that rely on pay-as-you-go tariffs. You know, the families, the parents struggle to get credit when they apply for an account. You know, so they're on pay-as-you-go, and pay-as-you-go internet access is getting gobbled up within 2 days. I'm in a rural setting, so I don't have broadband in my house, so I'm hotspotting just now. But what I've noticed is within a few days, my data had been chewed up completely. So my concern is that we've got a whole swathe of families that are going to really struggle to either get connected via broadband because they can't access libraries and free broadband services. And if they're on mobile data, that's going to get chewed up really quickly. So, you know, we started off the Twitter campaign, you know, to get large companies like Vodafone and O2 to acknowledge this and free up data. For them, it's a drop in the ocean. So I don't know how everyone would feel about us maybe retweeting that and get you guys to jump at it. But I just think for us, the need for connection right now, so even if you take devices out of the picture, the need for connection, even just having one device with one account that can get unlimited Wi-Fi right now would be a massive godsend for these.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good point. Okay. Any other people coming in? Anything in the chat, Jen, that you've seen?
Yeah, Grant asked about how charities can get access to online platforms at charitable rates.
Okay, yeah. So there's Charity Digital, which used to be Charity Technology Exchange. I think we even had a name prior to that, which has got a good roundup of some of the stuff that you can get. So for example, you can get the business Zoom account at 50% off. I think I might be wrong, I think a 10-person account is something like £150 for the first year. And there's some really good stuff within there. There's also a site called Charity Catalogue, which I know John and a lot of the SCVO digital team feed into, and that has a really good roundup. Maybe Jen put the link in there. So Charity Catalogue has a good roundup of lots of tools that are either heavily discounted or free to non-profits. And it's all clearly categorised by things like data manipulation, video editing tools. John, I don't know if you've got any other... I caught you mid-cough there, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've got any other sources in terms of kind of heavily discounted software.
Yeah, so I'd really recommend Charity Digital. It's a really good resource because they partner with a lot of big software companies to get good deals. So like G Suite is free and certain tiers of Microsoft Office are free as well. In the big guide that we're writing about different tools you can use for digital services, we've focused on products which are either completely free for charities or have a freemium price plan, which means you can try it on a for free basis and then pick up a monthly subscription if you want to do that. And the reality is today that a lot of the really effective tools are available at no or low cost for charities, so you don't need to be investing a lot of money. I mean, it's really about understanding the feature set and any features that you really need in terms of security and privacy, understanding how it all fits together. And I think one example I would give that's a kind of quick one is a lot of very small charities might be using a single Google account, but if you move to G Suite, which you can do for free, you get a lot more features in terms of controlling access and managing user permissions. So Charity Digital is a really good resource to explore what's there. And once you've registered with them, you can access a wide range of products.
Yeah. There's a question actually just came in from Vicky there. So I'm not going to pick this up in a huge amount of detail, but it's a really good point about concerns about people living with abusers and who might have devices monitored. So there's about, I think, maybe 7 domestic abuse kind of guidance and best practice in that Google document. So there's a lot of that stuff is addressed in that Google document. The other thing which we're planning on doing, and this might come with over the next few weeks, is having a very lockdown conversation, specifically working with organisations working in the violence against women and girls field. That won't be an open call for very obvious reasons, and it'll be pretty much invitation only. So if you work in that space, then get in touch with me and John, and we can let you know when that's going to come up. It will be a much more vetted calls. It won't just simply be the form. We'll have to know which organisation you work for and know that you're an actual member of staff before we let you on the call. There's kind of obvious reasons around that, but that Google document has some really good practice for people working in that space and how they're doing that safely and some of the concerns that you might have around that. So that's worth going and having a look at, Vicky. I'm conscious of time. John, you want to come in? Yeah.
I wanted just to round up a wee bit and plug a form that we'd really like people to fill in. So obviously these calls and the Google documents linked to them are like very live, open conversations where people can chip in their best practice or questions. And what we're trying to do at SCVO to help move this forward is take the best practice and get it there in blogs. So there'll be some blogs with case studies of stories we've heard today. And also we're looking at what ways are going to help charities understand digital platforms better. So these calls we'll keep doing. We're hoping to get a podcast together as well. But if you complete the form that I've just shared in the chat, I'll maybe do it again so that it's right there. But basically use that, and that enables us to see what kind of challenges you're facing, but also what kind of ways of support are going to be most suited to your charity. Our sense at the moment is we want to have that mixture of a long and active list of resources like the ones that the Google Docs are capturing, but also slightly more condensed material so that if you're sharing it with colleagues, you can point them to a blog and say, well, look, here's an example of another charity doing it. Let's get started. So just use that form because it's really helpful for us to get a picture of where charities are at. And just watch out for blogs and case studies as they come out from SCVO later in the week. I think the other final thing to say, which is probably kind of obvious now, is that the next call that we do, we'll do a pre-registration for that. It will not be a massive process, but it will just be something so we can capture and verify email rather than having a completely open Zoom call, because that obviously didn't work this morning. So thanks for your forbearance with that. And I think we did get there in the end. And just to say thanks very much to the speakers and contributions. So I think a thing that we recognise in SCVO is that charities are all learning this together. So one of the most valuable things we can do is put you in touch with each other. So instead of having a central expert, we know that charities all around the country are learning a lot very quickly. So those conversations are very valuable. So thanks for bringing them together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just to echo what John said, this is not going to be the last call. So we'll have another one into next week, and we'll let people know about that and get that form out. But just, I guess, just that notion that this is a much wider package of support that's going on at the moment. So if there's anything at all where you feel you need support, do fill out that form, and we can support you with that. But the kind of content that's coming out is really about how do we draw out best practice from the sector in a really practical way, rather than just making it quite tool specific. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for joining us. Sorry again about what happened this morning. It was kind of exciting in a way, I guess, but it's hopefully not gonna happen in the future. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much. Catch you all later. Cheers.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye. There we go. See you all later.
Bye.
Right, for those of you who have not left the room because maybe you went to put on a coffee, I'm just going to have to remove you. So give me a second, I'll just get this done. Two seconds. Let's do this.
You might want to leave Joe Robertson on. Joe, are you there?